What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we make strength and conditioning not boring anymore. Before we get into today's episode, hit that subscribe button so you're notified when more content from us gets out. It also helps us reach more coaches and impact more lives. In this special episode, I talk with Coach Jeff Moyer, where we tease and talk about what will be in our sprint biomechanics course. You're going to learn ways about how to help your athletes run faster, reduce the likelihood of injury by actually understanding how the foot and ankle complex works, how the hip flexors work, how the hamstrings actually contract when the foot hits the ground. This misnomer about what the hip flexor actually does when your foot is behind the body. We cover all of this inside this presentation and inside this conversation. Enjoy it. Here at Strength Coach Network, we pride ourselves on giving you the best quality information from strength and conditioning coaches and practitioners that still work with or have worked with athletes. This is not theory. We are always about giving you practical information that you can apply day one the minute you're done listening to this. And you can check us out for a $1 trial in the link down below. Click that link and find out more about us. So I'm gonna go look back and I'm gonna go find the questions that we got from people on social media back when we asked.
I copied those somewhere, and I'm sorry, I can't seem to find where I put them.
You did nothing wrong. I'm gonna go find them in our conversation, and while I look, I want you to explain to me again. Like we were joking about the delayed knee extension thing, diving into the actual biomechanics, because that's what we're going to be talking about here. You talk about the course. Talk about why delayed knee extension isn't real.
Do you just want me to read from the fucking biomechanics of the takeoff from 1981 Soviet Sports Review? Because I have it pulled up right here.
Please do.
Okay, for the second problem concerning extension of the support leg in the push-off, resolution of this problem exceeded all expectations. And if you read before in the article, because it ended up being like a two-part study that they'd done. The first part was they were talking about how there was an argument over is there a knee extension or not. And a lot of the scientists and coaches thought there was. And this was actually done by Zatsiorski. And it seems that the automatic structure of the knee joint is such that when the leg is extended from 168 to 164 to 168 all the way to 180, so a full straight leg, the distance between the hip and the ankle joint is not only not increased, but is even decreased by 8 millimeters. This occurs with the roll of the joint surface of the tibia of the part of the joint surface of the femur, which has a greater radius of curvature when seen from the side. Thus, extension of the leg and the knee joint from 164 or 168 all the way to full capacity is useless movement, since it does not lengthen the leg in the biokinetic link during the push-off phase. For this reason, the angle of the knee joint at the end of takeoff at running at maximum speed should not exceed 165, 168. And this is something docs always talk about. If you see a full knee extension during sprinting, that usually indicates that they are leaping, not sprinting, and that there's an ankle issue. So there's going to be something with the calves and ankles. So as a assess and correct thing, let's go to the ankle. Let's see what's going on.
So for any of our listeners that are like, okay, Jeff, you lost me a little bit. Take it from.
Oh, sorry.
You're smart.
Are we going right now? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're good.
I thought we were just chatting, dude.
No, okay. We're chatting, but go dive in, go with it.
So yeah, that's just one of the things we talk about, right? So Doc himself, Dr. Yessis. When I say Doc, I apologize for anyone that may not know what I'm talking about. Dr. Michael Yessis and the Soviets. Their big thing was, okay, what are the force-producing actions? And this comes from an idea from Verkhoshansky, and the idea is taken from Bernstein, right? So we can trace things back to the 1930s. Nice, you got your narrow spike ball, I love it. And what are the key force-producing actions, and what are the secondary actions? And what's funny is this idea is now recirculating in the realm of the dynamic systems, ecological constraints-led people, which are talking about that very same thing, which has been written about and talked about since the 60s. But nonetheless, so what are the force-producing actions in sprinting, right? We have knee extension, or the leg extension, or paw back, or thigh angular velocity in the knee drive. I'm trying to use the more modern terms, and then we have ankle joint extension, which J.B. Marin's doing a crap ton of research now into the importance of the foot and ankle joint. And it's all things that Dr. Yes has been talking about forever. And so with ankle joint extension at the push-off, at the tail end of the push-off, you should not have knee extension. Otherwise, you can't have kind of two going on at the same time. And they talk about this in this article from 1981 that was done in Zatsiorsky's lab. And that the major role, I'll read it right here. Hold on a second. Right here. Thus, if the ankle joint and the plantar flexor muscles are the main ones for the braking phase, meaning when the foot hits the ground, then it is obvious that they must also be the main ones during the takeoff. Actually, this is the case. During the takeoff, external energy it increases by 340 joules, which I don't necessarily know what joules means. I know it's a form of energy, but outside of that, I don't know what it equates to. If the knee joint muscles do only 31 joules, which is going back to looking at what are the force-producing actions, they found that the knee joint only contributes 31 joules compared to the ankle joint, which contributes 340 joules of work. Then the foot plantar flexor do more than 6 times as much. Therefore, the main driving link in running with maximum sustained speed is the foot. And again, circling back now to everything that's being published in people, J.B. Marin's doing a lot of work on the role of the foot and the ankle. And it's, sorry guys, a lot of this has been known.
It has been known, but how come Doc and other people like that haven't gotten the notoriety, or even why aren't even people citing it nowadays?
I mean, this is just an opinion, man.
Correct. Yeah, this is not. Obviously, it's not. Yeah, like what?
One Doc was well before the social media age. Doc was well before all that stuff. Doc also, by the time more of that stuff, more of the internet came out and more of the forums and all that stuff, Doc was already a bit bitter and tired of our industry. So he always had this kind of chip on his shoulder when talking to coaches. And he had a way of arguing that I think turned a lot of people off, that he would always pose questions to whoever he's talking to. And if they can't answer the questions, then he knew that they were full of shit. And people don't like to be questioned. I mean, let's just be totally honest here. People don't like to be questioned, and because it makes them really kind of have to explain themselves and it lets the person know if they actually know what they're talking about. So Doc turned a lot of people off to that stuff. And I think one of the things is Doc had a way of taking complex problems and making them simpler. I'm not saying simple, just made them simpler. And a lot of that is found through the Russian and former Soviet research and talking to the former people in that time. I was fortunate to be in contact with Zatsiorsky, and I got to talk to him about this particular study and got to talk to him about this stuff. And, because they were searching for, they're looking for the holy grail for things, right? Because performance in the Olympics was like everything. It was what they were, to show how godly, their Soviet system was and how great communism was and shit. And as shitty as it was great for sport development because it was all government driven and fed and funded. And so they looked for everything, and there was literally no stone unturned. And so I don't know. I really don't know. People, I don't know. Our industry has a weird history here in the United States, but what I'm hoping to do, and with your help, is to teach people history of our industry, teach people the history of this former Soviet system. And
vacations are meant for you to be outside doing things that you love and reconnecting with your family and your friends and recharging your battery. It is not meant for you to travel and listen to some coach talk in a conference hall and eat some food that really isn't the best thing that you want to be eating. Take back your vacations and do so with a Strength Coach Network annual membership. When you purchase an annual membership, you're going to get access to our course, Performance Coaching 101. In the subsequent years, it'll renew and you'll get access to 102 and 103. Each year, you're going to get access to 2 NSCA CEUs CEUs, and 10 CSCCa CEUs. These CEUs will allow you to be able to learn from the comfort of your office. You'll be able to earn CEUs on your time rather than having to travel. Take back your vacation and be able to do this with a Strength Coach Network annual membership. Click the link down below for more information.
The work done there, because for whatever reason, research, we have this tendency in our industry now that if things are published more than 10 years ago, we don't want to listen to it, or it's outdated, or shit, maybe even 5 years ago. Or if it's not coming out of the mouths of these influencers, then it's not necessarily true. And again, my argument, and one of the things I want to do with putting together this course with you, is show that this stuff was done well before. A lot of this stuff is being regurgitated, and two, how to apply it and what it means in a practical sense when, one, assessing your athletes, and then two, how to now correct or improve those things. And so that's essentially what I want to do with this. But
well, one of the things, I mean, even the knees over toe guy, like not going there, but his whole thing of one of the first things that I heard him talk about on a podcast that he was on, Joel Smith's show, it was, he was one of the first times, and again, my own ignorance, but he talked about, the foot and how everybody, like, if that's the thing that interacts with the ground, why aren't people focusing on it more? And so but again, at no point was he ever saying, hey, this stuff came from these people. He probably didn't know it, but we need to be citing the things of where we're learning it from.
I don't know. I heard, what was it? I don't want to misquote it necessarily, but I think I heard it from Buddy Morris. And he said it, I think, tongue in cheek. So I don't want to put Buddy Morris on blast, because he's a great human being and a legend and one of the greatest to do it. But I think remember him saying that, I'll quote you for the first couple weeks, but after that, it's mine.
Mike Boyle said that too.
Or was it Mike Boyle? Okay, yeah. Someone said it. Maybe it was Boyle. But nonetheless, I always thought that was funny. And I think, I find that humorous. And I think that's kind of our industry. But also, there's so many people now. I mean, there's a guy on social media that has 100 some odd followers, and he does all this sprinting stuff. And he's starting, you remember, I think maybe a year or two ago, he started posting knee drive exercises and claiming that he found this, and then, talking to him, because I reached out to him hey man, this stuff's been done and researched and things. And what he expressed to me was that he did not know that, because he never looked into those authors and looked into those books. He just came to those conclusions. I don't know, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if he's just saying that because he wants more followers. I don't know anymore with this industry. But I don't know. There is, success leaves clues, and what seems to be happening. There was this what's his name? Ricky Gervais talked about atheism versus science versus religion, and I'm not going to make this conversation about that, but nonetheless talked about if you burn a lot of these so-called books in science, they'll eventually come back. They'll be proven again. And I think that's literally what's happening with our industry. Is we're not burning books, but we're just not doing our homework. And what's coming around is all the same shit that was already shown years ago.
I found the questions.
Cool. Let's go.
First one that somebody wrote was, what are best special exercises for sprinting? And then the follow-up was, and changing direction.
I don't think there is any one best, you know what I mean? I don't think it's that simple. I think it depends on the person and what their needs are. So sorry, I can't give you necessarily that one simple answer. There are some great ones. Knee drive is a great exercise for many reasons. And I know Fred Duncan just posted last week or something saying that it is a good exercise, but it should not replace squats and stuff like that. And again, no one's ever said that, but what Soviet research has done that they did do, and there's some articles I know I sent you, is they wanted to see what are the most energy using joint actions. What is the most energy draining, that requires the most energy, and when fatigue hits, what are the joint actions that kind of take, what are the biggest ones affected? And they found that the hip joint extension or hip joint flexion is the biggest one. That is the one that uses the most energy. And when there's fatigue, that is the one that affects kind of everything else in the chain. So the knee drive is a great exercise for general and specific, because people will argue it's not specific because the speed isn't similar to how it's used, whether it's 10 meters per second or 9 meters per second. But nonetheless, the range of motion is still there, and stuff. But that is a good exercise. But I don't know if that's the one that's going to just set your athletes over the top. And for change of direction, same answer. I apologize. It depends on what that athlete needs. I don't think there is any particularly one great exercise. I think it's very much on what that individual needs, whether it's more projection or more deceleration into it, the ability to stop faster or anything like that.
How does Jeff feel about the phrase thigh angular velocity?
It is what it is, man. Whatever. If that's what we're using this day and age, sure. To me, that just means knee drive, and because that's what I was taught from Dr. Yes's. They called it the knee drive. But thigh angular velocity is the same thing, but it's nice that it's being recognized now in more modern times and modern research for its importance, even though it's something Dr. Yes's has been talking about for 40, 50 years.
What do the hamstrings do at toe off?
They relax. They relax, so that way it allows the thigh to contract and fold up to drive forward, because you can't have the hamstrings on blast when you're trying to drive the thigh forward. So something's got to relax. Otherwise, you just swing a straight leg, and I'm not going to get great hip flexion if your hamstrings are, because the hamstrings also contribute to hip extension. So they have to kind of relax. So muscles, what Doc always kind of taught me was the muscles act like dimmers, right? There's no switches, they're dimmers. So some muscles, their activation more dims and the other ones kind of come up, and it's just this cyclic action of, while we're sprinting, of kind of dimming and then turning back up, if that makes sense.
Sticking with the hamstrings, this person said, are the hamstrings really eccentrically contracting? How do we know? How were people conducting research back in the 1960s?
Man, I don't know. It just makes sense to me that as the thigh travels forward from underneath the body and comes up, that the hip flexors, the rectus femoris, the lower abdominals start to relax. And now the hamstrings start to develop tension to slow down the thigh, and then to reverse that action into, front side mechanic, paw back, hip extension, whatever you want to call it, transgendral speed or whatever now Chris Corfus is calling it, from Ken Clark, to contract to drive the thigh down. And so it makes sense to me that as the shin whips out, there's an eccentric action occurring. Isometric means there is no change in length. So I don't know how that works. And then when the foot hits the ground, it acts quasi-eccentric, isometric in a sense, because it's got to, we hit the ground, we got to be able to not sink, right? So we can't have gravity kick our ass and we just collapse when our foot hits the ground, right? And that's usually due to the quads and the rectus femoris, but the hamstrings also do kind of have a quick isometric action. So, again, that argument of isometric versus eccentric, I know the researchers years ago, Bosch and them, talk about isometric. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't doubt that there is always an isometric action at some point, but it doesn't act isometrically the entire time you're bringing your leg down, because the hamstring is a biarticular joint. And a lot of the research I'm seeing is not looking at the fact it's a biarticular joint. They're looking at a single end of a joint. They're either looking at the hip or they're looking at the knee. But the fucking hamstring is a biarticular joint. And when you sprint, it has to work at the hip and at the knee simultaneously. And so for me personally, I have a hard time looking at research that looks at it from a single joint, because it's not used in a single joint fashion.
TeamBuildr has been my trusted source for online software programs for my athletes since 2019. Since then, they've continued to grow. They have this new practice integration where practice planning can integrate with the sport coach. You have your sports science, your AMS, the questionnaires. They've continued to evolve and keep giving you the things that you need. It has made my life easier as a strength coach. I want the same for you. You do not need to keep printing on lift cards. Please, printing on lift cards in Excel, you don't need to do that. If you need help being able to purchase it, they have a pre-written grant on their website. They're also part owners in the Plyomat with Coach Rich Burnett. So if you need to get a good device that can accurately and validly and quickly get your jump height and ground contact time, so now you can get RSI, Plyomat's a great choice. We utilize that at Goldfinch. Check Team Builder. Check them out in the link down below. Please stop printing on lift cards. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to make your athlete's life easier. It's easier to program on the back end. Check out Team Builder in the link down below.
So it doesn't make sense to me. The GHR or the glute ham gastroc raise, however you want to phrase it, is one of the only, if not the only exercise I know that creates a double contraction at both ends of the hamstring as well as the calves and glutes. I have not seen anything other than that. So for me, that is a superior exercise, and no one's studying that.
So this is not a question here, but because you brought it up, and I've had Josef on the show to talk about it. He keeps talking about how nobody's doing them right anymore because all they're doing is just staying in knee flexion, and they're not actually doing the hip extension as well.
Correct. Yeah, I actually.
Why aren't people doing that? I don't get it.
Again, I don't know.
It's easier. That's why I heard myself ask the question. Like, you don't, again, if you're only isolating the one joint, you're not having to go all the way down. Go with the hip extension. Like,
I don't know. I think it's just a matter of people don't know what they don't know. With that, I don't think it's an exercise that's been talked about enough. I've tried a little bit because I know there's hamstring symposiums and everyone's talking about hamstring injuries. You know what I mean? Like there literally is. Sportsmith had a great speed conference last summer about this time of year, and I think there was 12 presenters, maybe more, and I would argue maybe over 50% of them talked about hamstring injuries, and not a single one of them talked about that it's a biarticular joint and we should train it as such. So I have no idea. I know I did a podcast years ago. This was maybe 12 years ago for they don't have a sports performance podcast anymore, but because I talked about this and I did not promote their GHR machine and how they do it, that podcast never got aired. So that was fun.
Huh. This person wrote, I think this would be a good course. Maybe it's a thought you've had. Could you include how movements change with different limb or torso lengths?
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of the plan.
Yeah, that's not really a question.
I mean, that's kind of the plan. Limb length definitely changes things. So how to assess and correct that is all part of what we plan on doing with this course.
I recently started implementing sprinting for my athletes, private, high school, and college. I'd like to know more on the proper techniques and big picture small frame that you mentioned within the biomechanics that this course will be based on.
Yeah. Again, I plan on doing all of that, teaching what I've learned throughout the years through my studies with Dr. Yessis for 12 plus years, and things I've learned from other people like Jonas Duda and other great coaches, but how to assess whether you work in a one-on-one situation and you want to break it down like that, or how to do it in a team setting. And then how to apply it in a team setting, because I know that's a bit difficult, and that's one of the questions and arguments I get thrown at, or I've had thrown at, is how do you do it in a team setting and then individualize it for that. So that's all something I plan on covering in this course.
Well, I think we could also talk about, I just had the reel came out today, and we had a 8-minute conversation from my conversation with Jason Weber from SpeedSig, but that's what they're trying to do, is trying to help put numbers to the things that you're talking about. So whether it was called, thigh angular velocity, as we talked about, whatever the term is, now it's getting the credit that it deserves. But what SpeedSig is able to do is actually quantify those numbers by using the GPS metrics or the GPS devices that people have. Instead of wearing it up on your spine at practice, if you wear it around your waist, they're able to help measure that stuff. So that is something that somebody could do in the big picture for large groups of athletes as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've used more so to quantify what my eyes see, but I use view motion I think that's a great tool, and using that in a team setting can also help see things better. But yeah, there's some great tools out there that we'll go through and cover in the course. But I want to be able to provide coaches, teach them how to fish, so to speak, and how to use their own eyes and how to see things and stuff, and not always have to rely on technology or paying a membership fee or a subscription and stuff so they can get the data that they necessarily need.
I think the the nature of this question is understanding energy systems and biomechanics of the muscular contraction. Dasher has completely changed the game for how I'm able to time my athletes, whether I'm doing ACell, max velo, or curvilinear running. Had the blues, had the blacks at Goldfinch. Now that I have the silvers, this has saved me so much time in setup, breakdown if I'm going from Ankeny to Huxley, or from Ankeny to the Nevada location, or Nevada to Huxley, like wherever I got to go time athletes, it has made my ability to go from one place to another so much easier with the silvers. Strength coaches that have to go from one field to the other, or from the field to the court, this will help you save time. Now, in the spirit of saving time, you also have the ability to have an API interaction with TeamBuilder, so now you can see all the data on the back end. Seeing data on the back end, Dasher has a free app, a player profile app, that'll allow athletes to see their data. Over 6,000 coaches and athletes have done so. And if you want more than just the timing gates, if you check them out in the link down below, they have solutions to help you out with vertical jump, broad jump, RSI, all that. Check them out in the link down below. Because it said, I personally understand the energy systems and biomechanics. I want to understand proper technique within energy systems and biomechanics. So I think this person is like the biomechanics of a shorter sprint versus a longer sprint, and then needing to train the energy system contractile, like, all right, my hamstrings have to contract for a longer period of time because I'm running a 400 versus I train a 600, a 60 meter sprinter, like that being the nature of this question.
Yeah. So looking at more acceleration versus top end, we'll definitely do both. As far as programming, how I program, I don't really want to get into that with this course. I want to keep it more towards how to assess and then how to correct or improve things, with whether it's a technical drill, whether it's a physical drill, physical exercise, a specialized exercise, a general exercise, range of motion improvement, how to load Lila exogen sleeves or whatever it is, versus this is how I program for a 200 meter sprinter, a 100 meter sprinter, a 800 meter runner. I don't want to get too much into that because that's a whole other can of worms.
So you talked about Lila, and so this is not a question that's there. This is me, an anecdote from my sprint session on Tuesday. I've been hitting, now that the weather's getting nicer outside, instead of just doing my build for 5, run for 10 inside because we don't have as much room in the gym. Been getting back outside, and I had strained my calf, I want to say about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And you can completely tell me if this is a wrong way of using it or if I am onto something here. But I put on the Lilas and I loaded up to 500 grams on each leg, and it forced me. I put it on the backside, so it was more posterior chain, more hamstring dominant, and I felt like I could run, and I wasn't as like apprehensive about my calves because maybe I was overly using my calf. And like, if anybody wants to dive into the RPR, Douglas heel be activated, I wasn't going 1, 2, 3. I was 3, 2, 1, whatever. I was able to run and feel less scared because I knew having those on, like hamstrings and glutes were firing first. And so that's my anecdote.
Yeah, they're a great tool.
Does that make any sense, or am I just full of shit? You can tell me.
So no. So forgive me. I guess I understand the question. So did that cause you to strain your calf?
No. I'm not saying it.
Is that a good return to play?
It helped me in my return to play because I hurt my calf 5 weeks ago. I was able to do some 90% running on my own the week after. And then when I went back outside, I was still apprehensive when I was running, but I was healthy. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to put the Lilas on and I'll put it on the back side of my calf instead of the front, and I'll make it more loading of my hamstring when I sprint. And that forcing of my hamstring to be loaded, I felt better while running. And then when I took them off, I was not apprehensive anymore. And I ran the fastest that I had run this far in this early morning season. So that's where I was saying, like, am I full of shit by thinking, hey, I hurt my calf, therefore maybe I'm not sequencing properly and not using my hamstrings right away, load them with this to get the neural adaptation. Like, was I full of shit or what?
I'm not going to get into the Douglas heel RPR stuff. Like there could be several different reasons why you hurt your calf. I don't know about your firing pattern or things like that. I would have to see you run. But I mean, if you're 5 weeks post injury and you're feeling pretty good, yeah, I think the Lilas are a great return to play strategy.
I don't think anybody wants to watch me run, Jeff.
I agree, but I'm just saying, if you want, we can make that happen and make it an Instagram reel. But yeah, I think Lilas are a great tool for return to play.
Hawken Dynamics is my preferred choice for force plates and for handheld dynamometers. Made in the USA up in Maine, I have been using them since 2020 when I was at Towson University. Still use them at Goldfinch today, and I brought the plates to the high school that I've trained at. We will use the plates and transport them when we train athletes at the many different high schools that we currently work at. As I said, they are a handheld dynamometer as well with the True Strength. You can assess athlete internal, external rotation, hip, AB, adduction, calf strength, hip, whatever you want to assess, you can do with the True Strength. It also has the ability to pair with the difference striking machine. So now you can see single strike, multiple strike. Check out Hawken Dynamics down in the link down below.
I think they're a great tool for performance. I think, if you felt good, that's probably a pretty good thing to do. I've seen, and you've seen firsthand, some great things when using them and applying force into the ground and helping mechanics and killing two birds with one stone.
Speaking of max velocity, and this is probably real max velocity, not me running max velocity yet. That's my max velocity. It's not the true max velocity. Maybe something on the biomechanics of the foot and ankle, spring ankle series, pogo hops, and their relation to max velocity. This kind of goes back to what we talked about at the beginning, but
yeah,
that's something that, like, so again, this foot and ankle thing, there's...
Yeah, no, 100%. I plan on covering that and getting into that, man, because it's such a what I tell all the high school, particularly high school football players around here, it doesn't matter, necessarily how much force you can generate through your hips and knees in a squat if your foot can't transmit it to the ground, right? I don't care necessarily the engine in the car if you're driving on flat tires. Right. And so you got to be able to transmit that thing into the ground. And that is often when doing the biomechanical analysis that I see is stiffness seems to be oftentimes missed. And even at the highest levels, I had a Division I sprinter at University of Pitt come out, and I have videos and pictures. She had knee extension issues. First time I got her on the track, videoed it, looked at her. She was knee extension the entire time. All right, well, what's going on? What's your history with your ankles? Oh, she has a history of some foot and ankle shit. Well, okay, that's pretty interesting. I asked after the fact, and then we started doing more calf raises, single leg calf raises, and some other ankle stuff, and went back to sprinting. And next thing you know, you start seeing the knee bend, and there's more of an angle there, and she just felt better. She felt bouncier.
This question we kind of already answered, but I'll dive it back home, is how biomechanics works with sports tracking equipment, how it's used in sports science through Catapult or similar devices. I just talked to you about before. Again, doesn't matter if it's Stat Sport, doesn't matter if it's Catapult. You can utilize either Catapult Stat Sports devices worn around the waist, and you can use the Speed Sig software to be able to know those biomechanic metrics, those sprint metrics. So then you can have that and build a profile for an athlete over time, whether they're healthy or they're injured.
From my knowledge, and this is my elementary knowledge because I'm in the private sector working, one-on-one situations. So I have not had a lot of exposure to working with those devices, but from my understanding, they're more GPS tracking units, and they track more velocities, deceleration, distance covered, things like that. So I don't think they track any kind of biomechanical information. But I think combining the two, meaning a biomechanical analysis combined with the information that you're getting from the GPS, I think could be really powerful and great, particularly in a team setting. I think, but having a separate biomechanical analysis and profile of an athlete I think is great because you can see where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, and then also if they happen to get injured for whatever reason, whether it's contact or non-contact, you can then, from a return to play, use that use analysis to see where they fall in relation to what they were before, or what you're trying to improve. So it's great for tracking red flags, but it's also great for identifying strengths and weaknesses in performance and return to play.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like GPS and stat sports, they don't do that stuff. They track all those other metrics. But what that company SpeedSig does, they're able to use those devices, which have the gyroscope in it and tell you the movement. But when worn at the waist, they're able to track those metrics for you. And Zach Higginbotham and TK, like Kier's buddies that have presented Inside Strength Coach Network before. But TK was the first to get it down at USF, and being able to use that on return to play guys and build out the profile of like, okay, what is their hip flexion angles? What are their ground contact times? Like that's what that company is able to do by utilizing those hardware devices.
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
Biomechanics, techniques, and special exercises are the things that will move the industry forward. Getting someone stronger with a barbell is as hard as falling out of a boat and hitting water. That's what somebody wrote.
I agree.
Let's sprinting, breakdown, and analysis, how to connect it, as well as ecological dynamics approached and how to reconcile the two. I'm big on dynamic interaction systems theory, but also believe that success leaves clues and striving towards better technique can be good. Powerlift has been my choice for strength and conditioning equipment ever since I got into the field. Right now, I still have their racks, I have their barbells, I have their bumpers, specialty bars, and we have the IMTP device at Goldfinch, and it's been great for us because it's allowed us to free up the rack where we used to have to do the IMTPs. Now we use that IMTP device, roll it around, we've created more space. You have to check them out. Doesn't matter if in your college, high school, pro, tactical, or private, they have the ability to make whatever customizations and whatever adjustments you need. I was a part of the weight room that was the 32 brand new rack facility at Iowa football. You see what they did for TCU football. Doesn't matter how big, how small, whatever your customizations are, Powerlift is number one in the exercise equipment space for a reason. Check them out in the link down below. Figuring out how much to do and when to leave it alone and just let the athlete be an athlete.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that because now it's kind of bridging two ends of the spectrum a little bit, and that's where I love to live. So again, tying back to something I said earlier, there are key aspects, there are key movements, and this is a term used by Verkhoshansky that he got from Bernstein. And in the ecological dynamics realm, they use, what is it called? It is called, they talk about Bernstein essential variables, right? So that's a phrase that someone else used from Bernstein. And so nonetheless, there are key aspects, right? That is what we as coaches, when we look at someone, we just know, okay, that person can throw it really well, they can run really well, they can do whatever the motor skill is that we're doing. Now, how do we coach that? So there are key movements and there's secondary movements. And the key movements are the force-producing actions that contribute to the locomotion of whatever we're doing, but also they have variability, but they have maybe less variability than the secondary movements. The secondary movements now are the ones that have far more fluctuations under things, and there's far more, variability. I'm sorry. So, for instance, with sprinting, knee drive, paw back, ankle joint extension, regardless if you're sprinting up a hill, if you're running sideways, if you're going straight, whatever you're doing, those things have to happen. Now, the degree in which they happen will change based off of the speed you're moving, the direction you're moving and things like that. But those three things have to happen. Your thigh has to fold up from behind to drive forward. That has to happen. You can't argue that shit. What you can argue now is, for instance, the secondary movements, which would be maybe the arms. What's going on with the arms? Well, maybe I have to fight off a defender. Maybe I'm holding a stick. Maybe I'm carrying a ball. You know what I mean? Like, that's the secondary movement. So when parents come to me or when coaches talk about our movements, it's not that I don't care. It's not that I don't listen. It's that, to me, is a secondary thing. I want to see what's going on at the hips. I want to see what's going on at the feet. Because the arms, if we're talking in a linear fashion, someone's just sprinting straight away. If the arms are doing some weird shit, they're usually reciprocally happening because of what's going on at the hips. So let's see what's going on at the hips. Because I can pump my arms perfect sitting here in this chair, but as soon as I start moving my hips, you're going to start seeing some weird shit happen. Otherwise, drummers would be some of the fastest runners. You know what I mean? Because it's what they're doing sitting here. So let's see what's going on at the hips. Let's see what's going on at the feet. Let's see what's going on at the lower extremities. So again, to tie it back, there are key aspects that we're looking for, but then there's these secondary, more fluctuating type of actions. Again, whether you want to call them attractors and fluctuators, whether you want to call them key movements, secondary movements. Again, the vernacular is important, but it just depends on, I guess, who you're talking to. But being able to tie that all in. And then on top of it, I am very influenced by James Wild's work, who took kind of the idea of individuality to sprinting and he's looked at athletes at all levels and all sports now, and he's got published research, and he came up with kind of 4 quadrants for acceleration, in which he found that these are kind of the 4 types of accelerators there are. And that's how he kind of buckets people. And that to me makes so much sense, because you do have these types of runners. So maybe you, Justin, are a stride length ground-based runner. Maybe I am a stride length air-based runner.
Vitruve has been my choice for VBT for years now, not only because of the encoder and how well it works with the app, and you can film movements with the camera and get live variable feedback in real time if you so choose to on the app, but the fact of the amount of content they have been pushing out to help coaches better understand VBT. It's not only just to move the bar faster. You can be working on what's the appropriate load for high rep sets based off velocity loss. You can be looking at velocity loss threshold between sets, in between reps. VBT is not just moving the bar fast. It's moving the bar fast with heavy weights. It's not just moving lightweight fast. And Vitruve has been at the forefront educating coaches on VBT and how to do it the right way. Check them out in the link down below.
Maybe Joseph is a ground and frequency guy. So there's not a lot of length. And he's running like Fred fucking Flintstone. Yeah. He's a spinner. You know what I mean? Or you know what I mean? And so there's these 4 quadrants, and for me, that has made so much sense and has really changed now how I work in a team setting, but also even at the individual setting now of, all right, this person is I see this and I'm going to put them in these buckets. Now that kind of helps me as far as what they're really good at, but also now what are things that they got to work on. So as a stride length ground-based guy for you, okay, we got to work on maybe some more stiffness and more reactivity drills, right? Better switching type of drills. So we're doing more knee drops. We're doing more, maybe some ISOs, foot and ankle ISOs. We're doing more kind of bounding and leaping type of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
For me, I'm stride length, but I'm also an air-based guy. So I'm not getting out. I'm going up. So what is causing that? Is that an ankle issue? Is that a hip issue? You know, what's going on? So let's kind of break it down from there. And that's essentially what I want to do with this course, is be able to teach, okay, I see these, they're in these quadrants. Now here are the exercises to, you're not trying to switch quadrants because they all have their pros and cons. We're just trying to move, what James talks about is you're just trying to move them more towards the middle. Right? That's it. So I'm trying to give you, I want to give you what you're good at, but I also want to improve the weaknesses. And same with me, if that makes sense.
Within that then, and this, so that was all the questions that people had asked. There was like 13 of them right there. My question, building off of what you just said there and the fact that I'm holding the neuro spike ball, how much of it will be then any posturology, neurology, or would that be like a part 2, if ever, or something else?
I'll mention it. We'll talk about it because it's not, I can't not talk about it once you kind of see these things. So particularly work with young kids, anyone that works with middle schoolers, high schoolers, you'll see some funky shit with their arms or with their head. You know, in RPR, they talk about neck drivers. You know, I have a theory that I've tested only here with my clients in the last 12 years, that those that are neck drivers have a couple retained primitive reflexes, the TLR being one of them, and an ATNR being one of them. So that's one of the reasons why they're always driving with their neck, because those reflexes are so ingrained. These are primitive reflexes related to the neck. And so you'll see, like, I have pictures and videos of this one kid. This was maybe 7, 8 years ago, and he didn't know why. He just did it. But when he'd sprint, every maybe third or fourth step, he'd whip his head to the right. He'd sprint, he'd just go like that. And he had no idea why. I'm willing to bet, and I didn't know this at the time because I wasn't studying primitive reflexes, but I'm willing to bet he had some learning troubles, and he had some behavior things. And he was a bit ADHD from a coaching standpoint. So I'm willing to bet he had some. So that's kind of my theory. So we'll talk about that, but I'm not going to get into like how do we now assess that? What are the things to correct that? But bringing it to attention, I think, is important. And then if people want to know more, they can feel free to reach out to me or do kind of their own research online, because there's a huge growing community of people studying and talking about that stuff now, especially with everything about autism and everything in the world and in government right now. So.
That instantly made me think, have you ever saw the South Park episode where she had Tourette's and she was like, I have tics, but nobody says they notice them. And she like told her.
No, I have not seen that one. But that's
that was like 2000, probably 2009 or 2008. I'm showing my age right there.
Good show.
Is there anything else you want to talk about? You're at work in the middle of the day, so what else do you want to talk about? Those were all the questions that we had on it. Anything else you want to,
No, man. I just want to, I want to help coaches. Again, if ultimately what we're trying to do is speed is king, and a lot of the testing that we do is aimed at improving performance, and a majority of sports require sprinting. A lot of these tests are aimed at improving aspects of it. For instance, broad jumping or vertical jumping or counter movement jumps or static squat jumps or RSIs or whatever. They're all parts of the puzzle. And a lot of it is all related to coming back to 1 or 2 or 3 degrees of sprinting. And so, okay, now how do we assess that? Since the mechanism of a lot of these non-contact injuries is sprinting, well, let's look at how they fucking sprint, right? And this is something that I used to work at a sports medicine orthopedic practice as a return to play component, and it just baffled me. Like, if the mechanism of injury, if this person knee hurts when they run, well, let's look at how they run. If their arm hurts when they throw, well, let's look at how they throw. But they don't do that. They just kind of, all right, let's do your banded exercises, let's do your TKEs, let's do your whatever, your bridges or whatever, RDLs. Wall sits or whatever shit, and then let's have you go back to your shitty mechanics. And sure, maybe taking time off from running your shitty mechanics made your knee feel better, but the biggest predictor for a future injury is previous injury. And I think there's several reasons, and that's a whole, I think, topic for another podcast. But I think one of the main reasons for that is because we're not looking at how people move.
Yeah, no, and we're not. And one of the things that I just looked at, the Soviet Sports Review articles that you were sharing with me, should children be taught to run, from 1969.
Yeah, dude. I think that's an interesting topic, because I know there are a couple people on social media in our industry that are huge into training children and long-term athletic developmental model, and they don't believe in teaching mechanics. And I'm not fully disagreeing with that, but if something looks like shit, or if it looks like it's going to lead to injury, then I feel I have to intervene. One of the biggest ones for me, especially with young age, but regardless of who I'm looking at, is heel striking when they sprint. If they're a heel striker, they're always going to be a heel striker unless you intervene, and now we work on that. And so that is something I can't turn away, because that will lead to injury, that will lead to performance, limiting performance and speed, that will lead to a whole host of shit. And so I, for the most part, do agree that children should just learn through play and learn through exposure to different movement skills and tasks and self-learn. But there are some things I do think that if they could lead to injury, we should intervene as professionals.
Amen, bro. Well, I'll let you go about the rest of your day. And yeah, man, I'm going to keep reading all this other research and looking forward to it, bro.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate
it. Thanks for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, click right here for videos just like that, and make sure you click here to subscribe to our channel. Have a great rest of your day.